Hey everybody, it's Melinda and I'm here to talk about the knockbox when it comes to dependents. Now, I got my knockbox for Christmas and I got all the files done and I uploaded a couple of videos about how important it is to let your next of kin know that you have a knockbox and that there are instructions in that knockbox and where it is, and make it easy for them to find everything. The whole point of the knockbox is to make it easy on your next of kin to manage your estate. And really, honestly, once you get everything in there and get it all situated, it's so much easier for you. Like I went through and I did my keys like the instructions say to. I gathered keys from all over the house and we found out that 90% of the keys that we own went to nothing that we have anymore. So we got rid of all those keys and now they're labeled and they're in a place, in a location in our house. And it's so easy. So if I need a key to the back door for some reason that we never use, then I know where that key is. If there's a back gate out in a field somewhere that I have a key to, there the key is right there. We can find them super easy. So that was an awesome step that we did, letting our knockbox next to kin people know about what we're doing. That was a very important step. Then my father-in-law, who had just passed in November, right before I got my knockbox, we finally brought his dogs home and they had to come and live with us. And that got me thinking about live things, pets, kids, older parents, any live thing that might be in your care. What's going to happen to that when you're gone? That is very important to think about. So you could even go so far as to think of your plants. If you have expensive plants in your house, if you have house plants that you've kept a long time, I don't have this problem, but a lot of people do. So I wanted to start with Bart Adams. We already did that video with Bart Adams and talk about dependent children. That's chapter 3. He came in, he's a local attorney, and he came in and he talked about how you should construct your will in such a way that it's the easiest thing on your dependent children if, heaven forbid, something happens to both parents and they are left not as wards of the court. Then today's video is talking about what to do with your pets. People have the regular things. They have dogs and cats, but they also have parrots that live for a long time. They have reptiles, they have hamsters and guinea pigs. People have koi ponds, they have horses and cows. All of these are not human, they're live assets that should be taken care of. And what I have learned from asking around is that the number one thing you should do is talk to the people that you assume will take care of your pets when you're gone, because they may not want to. They may not have the money to, they may not have the space to. It is a big deal to ask somebody to take over the care of your pets when you're gone. For our purposes, my husband and me, we brought these dogs home, but they were used to living in the country and they had to move to the city. That meant that we had to build a fence in our yard to keep them. We had to figure out how to feed them and take care of them in town. Then just recently, just this week, that one of the two dogs got really sick. She had been mourning the whole time that we owned her. She never got over the death of my daddy-in-law, and she just gave up, and she got really sick and then refused to eat, and we had to make the choice to put her down and what to do about that. And thank goodness our veterinarian in town was extra great about it. She is really good with helping you decide when it's time to do that and to make the process easy on you and as not sad as possible. And so we took her up there when the time came and she performed the euthanasia, and it was really sweet and sad and awful, but as good as it could be. And then we actually have a crematorium in town that has a pet side, and we were able to have her cremated, and we just got her ashes today, and we're going to take her ashes and spread them in the same place that her owner, my daddy-in-law, his ashes were spread. And so that brings it all around full circle. But oh my goodness, that was such a big deal. That was such a lot to put on us. We didn't mind. We were honored to do it, but it was a lot to ask. So I'm telling you to think through what it will be like if you were to be gone today and somebody had to come in and take care of your pets. Write out what you would like for them to do. Try to estimate what it would cost, and then talk to those people and make sure that they will accept that responsibility. If they say no, don't hold it against them. Don't think ill of them. That's their personal right to say no to that. They don't have to say yes just to make you happy. Let them say no and go to the next step. Okay, my daughter doesn't want them. What about my son? What about my nieces and nephews? What about a local animal shelter? Maybe I could call my veterinarian and have them set up a rescue. If I were to die today, my pets can go into a rescue situation where they can be adopted by somebody who wants them. So just don't assume, and make sure that it happens. Now, I've said a lot, but I have local veterinarian Elizabeth Smith, and I ran up to her veterinary clinic actually just a few days before we had to take our dog up there, our inherited dog up there to be euthanized. And I had no idea that she was about to get sick and have that happen. But that was the topic of our discussion, because it's so much more common than I realized. She's had all kind of crazy situations to happen, and she talks about those in this interview. I hope that you have enjoyed this two-part discussion about dependents, whether they be human or pets. I wanted to bring in some experts because I only know my situation, and these guys have lots of experience with what happened. So I hope you enjoyed the Bart Adams interview in chapter 3, and I hope you enjoy this interview with Dr. Elizabeth Smith in chapter 4. Hey everybody, I am at the animal clinic of Tippah County with veterinarian Elizabeth Smith. She has taken a few minutes away from her precious little furry animals to talk to us about how you can be prepared to have your pets taken care of after you're gone. So thanks for taking a minute.
Okay.
Elizabeth, will you just tell a little bit about your clinic?
My clinic it's been here for about, the practice has been here about 20 years. And I've been here 10 as the owner of it. So, this is the start of my 11th year here. So I'm the only vet here. And we see animals from Tippah, Benton, and some of Marshall County. So I'm the only one here. So it's a little manic at times, but we make it. So.
I bet it's overwhelming, isn't it?
Some days, but it's always interesting. So.
Okay, so am I right? And the reason this all came about, the reason it even ever would have crossed my mind is because I did inherit two elderly dogs when my father-in-law died. And there was a lot that went with that. It was a big obligation for me.
Absolutely.
So I feel like I'm not the only person that's ever happened to.
No.
So I'd like for you to talk about some instances where it happened to you.
Well, I have agreements with several clients that I just note in their medical record, and we make sure their family understands if they have specific wishes of what they want to do with their pets when they die. Usually where I come in is if they decide that the pet will not relocate well to another family member, won't do well without them, that kind of thing. Sometimes I come in, unfortunately, to euthanize the pet when the person passes away, and we've had to do that many times. And I always look at it as with the pet's best interest in mind. I'm not just going to put down a healthy animal if I don't have another solution for it. But we get a lot of elderly people that have like maybe a couple cats. Nobody ever comes in and sees them. They're not that socialized to other people. And you just have to think like what would be best for that cat, to put it in a completely new situation with new people and possibly have issues, you know, later on come up with it, or maybe there's nobody to take it, you know. So or maybe the pet's really elderly anyway, and we were just hanging on for the owner kind of thing. So I just try to look at that. I'm not just going to make a blanket like, sure, I'll put it down. You know, it's got to be a individualized thing every time. So sometimes that happens. We've had instances where some want to be buried with their pet, and actually my cousin owns a funeral home, and we've had to work together before for that, you know. But again, those are not cases that we're going to take lightly. You know, it's got to be the right decision for that pet, you know, every time. So sometimes that happens, but I usually try to, I have a couple of agreements, and obviously I couldn't do this very often, but I have a couple of agreements with clients where I will take their pet if something happens to them. So, and that's not, I don't initially share with my husband every time I make that agreement, but most of the time the owner outlives the pet, so I don't have to put my money where my mouth is on that, but I would if I agreed to it. So, so there's a few of those. But most of the time, I try to make sure that people absolutely understand that they need to have their loved ones very specifically know what they want with that animal. And they also need to understand, you know, if the family's going to take them or not, because you would be probably upset and amazed at the number of times family doesn't take a pet from a family member when they pass. That's actually not uncommon, and that's how we end up having to find homes for them or other things. The most the one I remember the most was a little dog named Miss Moni, belonged to an elderly man. He was a wonderful pet owner. As long as I've been a vet, I've been his vet for as long as I've been a vet, almost 20 years. And he was an excellent owner. And he was in pretty good health, but he was elderly, and he had a little, like a Patterdale Terrier, and he loved her, and she went everywhere with him, and they were just best friends, and he took excellent care of her, and I loved seeing him come in. And he actually did die kind of unexpectedly, even though he was elderly. And I found out a couple days later that Miss Moni didn't go to the family, that somebody was just coming by and feeding her. And I thought, he will roll over in his grave if nobody takes care of this animal. So we actually worked with the rescue to get custody of her. And we actually had to rehome her to Massachusetts. And it was she did really, really great. We fostered her with a family here until she could go. And she's really great. Everything was fine. But one day she ran away from him at the dog park because a truck just like his pulled up to the park. And I guess she remembered, you know, and thought it was him and ran towards it. It was so sad. But that just goes to show you like the bonds that these animals have. And when their owner's unexpectedly taken away, it's traumatic for them too, you know. So you just have to think. But that he didn't have any provision in his will for what happened to her, and the family wouldn't take her. So that's not what he wanted. Now, it ended up happy, and I keep in touch with him, and she's got a great family, but that could have gone a whole different way, you know. And so when my grandmother died, she actually listed in her will, I don't think any of the kids or grandkids were mentioned at all, but the dogs were. So the number one thing was that my cousin would take the two dogs and keep them the rest of their lives, and I would take care of their medical care, and that's what we did. So, and both of them lived out normal lifespans, and we had, you know, she had even what to do with them after, you know, she had it all labeled out, and that was good because we would have done it. There would have been enough of us. Somebody would have taken them, but that was exactly what she wanted to have happen to them, and it did. So, but only because it was really specifically listed out, you know, is what would happen. So, so that worked out really well. But
so put it in your will if you feel like you'll outlive your pet will outlive you, and talk to your veterinarian. Maybe put it in their medical records. Yep. Euthanasia is that what you call it?
Yeah,
euthanasia.
That's not always the wrong answer there either.
It's not, and I know it might sound cold if you've never lived it, but like one of the two dogs that we inherited wishes she had died when he died.
Yep.
She is so depressed.
Oh yeah, there's and we've had instances. Most of the time they grieve like we do, and they may not eat for a few days. They may not come out from the bedroom. There's but most of the time they come around. Sometimes they don't, and it's just
when they're elderly.
Yep, and there are things worse than death, So we don't want them to grieve themselves to not eat and never, it's rare that happens, but it happens. So
I think the main thing you're saying is just like Attorney Bart Adams said last time, talk to the people you want to take your pets.
Yep, because you'd be surprised if you assume, you'd be surprised. So, and I have a lot of elderly clients that will get puppies, and I think, I always want an elderly person to have an animal, but I'm thinking this one's probably going to outlive the owner, and that's when it's uncomfortable. But my job is to advocate for that animal, So even if it hurts feelings sometimes, like what's your plan here? So what happens to Fluffy if something happens to you? How can I help you? Make sure that she gets where she's supposed to be, because people just don't think, you just assume, or you don't ever. We don't ever think we're gonna die either, so we don't know about that. My sister and I, it's just us, and we have my parents who are thankfully in good health and in their late 60s, but they have 13 dogs.
Oh gosh.
So we've already said, like, I'll take this one and this one and this one, but you get those. But hopefully that won't be an issue. But it's you just think about those kind of things. That's the biggest thing. Like, I don't care about land and house and whatever. I just want to know how many dogs I'm gonna take.
What about weird things? And I say weird, not the typical cat, dog.
Well, birds are a big one. Birds outlive us very often, and so reptiles a lot of times will outlive us. And so I don't have personal experience with it here, but I have many friends that are veterinarians that have had to take elderly birds when their owners have passed, because they may have another 20 years left, So you actually see a lot of vet clinics that have like a big parrot or something, because that's not the pet for everybody. So you can't just, assume that somebody, it's one thing for a dog and a cat. You really can't assume somebody's going to take your big snake or your bird that's got another 40 years left, So you just really have to think those things out. So, and that's why, a lot of the rescues that deal with, birds, especially big birds, get so full, so it's almost always an owner passing away, and they do grieve really heavy because they're so bonded to people. Because you've been with them, you've been with them 20 years. You can imagine. So, so that's definitely a consideration before you get those pets. You've got to think ahead. So, so that's a big one too.
Okay, what else? Any weird stories of something like a fish or?
Not that I can think of. Not that I can think of. We've actually taken on, not for death of an owner, but we've taken on several like odd pets here that I didn't want to euthanize, so we just kept, like, I remember I had a guinea pig for years. It was an elderly when I got it, and it lived another few years, but the owner's daughter had gotten her when she was young, and then she went to college and they just didn't want to take care of it, and so they brought her to put to sleep, and I just couldn't do it because he'd taken such good care of this little guinea pig, and I thought surely he didn't have much time left. And he lived another 2 or 3 years, but he was no trouble. So we took him, and I have 2 ferrets for the similar reasons as well.
Oh, I've met the ferrets.
So, and not just anybody will take those, because they're not, they're a little more cleaning care, Yeah. But the guinea pig for sure, I thought that's not what that girl had in mind when she went to college, was that her pet that she took such good care of would be put down. But I get too that the parents didn't. That was her, there's a lot. It's a big job, for somebody. So, so that's definitely things we consider. But and horses live, 30 years. Most of the time, we're able to find them somewhere, but it can get a little tougher with dogs and cats. So.
Elizabeth, would you say if you've got a granny that you feel like is lonely, and you're considering a pet for them, maybe an adult pet
or senior pets are great. You have to look at like medical care for them, make sure that they're able to afford, basic medical care for them. But otherwise, they're not going to trip them as much. They want to lay on the couch and get petted. So that's good. You know, they're not going to require a lot of active walks and things like that. So those are, and cats are very excellent pets for elderly, because again, they'll lay in the recliner with them. You don't have to, they're not usually up under your feet to trip you up, you know. You just have to just take it personality based, but most of the time I don't want people being without pets, but it's not a good idea for, you know, your 85-year-old grandpa to get a new Jack Russell puppy. So usually that's just not a good idea unless you've got a plan for it, you know, if something happens.
So what you do and what all hometown veterinarians do, it's just a labor of love. So let's wrap up with, how can people support you or any local veterinarian that they have?
The biggest thing is just to be kind. You'd be amazed that, you know, in the almost 20 years I've been doing this, we've gone from like one of the most respected professions to not. And I think a lot of that has to do with finances. People don't realize how much money it costs to run a vet practice, and how much money goes into paying your staff and trying to give them a good quality of life. And medications are so expensive, and we do real medicine. You know, we're doing blood transfusions. I mean, they get cancer like we do. We do chemo here. They get the same stuff we do, and we've got to know about all of it. And I do surgeries every morning. And so people don't understand, like, it's real medical care. It just costs a lot. So, and there's nobody to subsidize it for us. It's a private business. And so we can't just do it because we love it. I wish we could, but we have to do it, and we have to stay open, and we have to stay viable so we can help pets. So that's the biggest thing. But, and then also just communicating with us, you know, my patients do not talk to me. So I have to get information from their owners. I have to get information just observing the pet, do a good physical exam on it. So when you call and say, I think this is wrong with my dog, I can't just diagnose that over the phone. I need to get my hands on it, you know. So that's a big thing too. But just really communicating with us. If you don't understand our instructions, if you don't think that we handled something, well, just talk to us about it. You know, we're human beings too, and we make mistakes, but we are here to help. So, you know, that's a big thing too. But I will say that in Ripley, I have not had near the negative experiences that a lot of my the colleagues have had, you know. And it may be because, like, you know, my 5th grade teachers are my clients. You know? People have known me my whole life, and so it's harder to hate somebody, you know. It's harder to blame somebody that you know. So, you know, and even when I've had adverse things happen, I would say by and large the owners are just as worried about me as they are, you know, their pet a lot of times. So I've just had a very good quality of life here, and a very good, happy practice for the most part. So I don't have those issues that other people have, thankfully.
So be nice to your vet.
Just be nice to everybody. So, you know, but I do think in the last few years we've taken a little more animosity than I was expecting, I guess, you know. But for the most part, we do fine here. Everybody's nice, so we don't have much trouble. So.
Well, I certainly appreciate all you've done for us and all my dogs all these years. So.
But we do love animals, so that's why we're here.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for taking time to talk to me.
You're welcome.
All right, see y'all. I hope you enjoyed that interview for Chapter 4 with Dr. Elizabeth Smith. And I do want to encourage you again, if you decide to get started planning for what will happen when you're gone and your next of kin have to take over your estate, I hope that you'll go to knockbox.com and order a box today. Those ladies have done a great job putting together a system for you to make it easy for you. And I just really wholeheartedly suggest that you go and start there and don't try to make it up for yourself. They've done a whole lot of the work for you. Have a great day.